Gosh, dang it. Let's start that over again. Hey, thank you for joining the Escape With Me book club. Escape with me, Sam Reiner.
And me, Hannah Rossell.
Into our most recent read. Come with us as we evade reality and go into detail about a new book. We'll be covering the book from beginning to end, so there will be spoilers. Today we're going to Nice, France. Published March 29th, 1928. The Mystery of the Blue Train is the sixth book in the Hercule Poirot series. For the first time lacking a Watson-type character, Agatha changes her writing style once more to add far more narrative than investigation. Was this a strong choice that shows off the Queen of Mystery's versatility once again? Or was this a misstep? And I have thoughts about that. But first, historical context. Not too much around this time period. We're looking at February 1927 to about March 1928 when this book was published. Last we saw, Agatha and her daughter went to the Canary Islands for 3 months because she was, quote, feeling pale, but most likely trying to avoid the blowback from her famous disappearance and just dealing with all the divorce stuff to begin with. Not a great time.
Not a good time for her.
I will say a month after this book is published, she petitions for divorce from Archie, which is so lame of him to make her do it.
I know. Ugh.
So anyway, I just thought it was important to point out that this book was written during a really big down moment in Agatha's life. And I think I mentioned in last episode that all Agatha Christie ever wrote about this time period was essentially, it sucked. I'm not going to talk about it.
I mean, more power to her. Protect your peace, I guess, right?
So that's this time period. And I honestly wonder if it's why this book feels off. Because when we read The Big Four, we were warned and later told a lot of people don't like that book because it's more of an action book than a mystery book, but we kind of liked it. It was competent for an action book, and Poirot was his manic, crazy self as normal. But in this book, he just seems depressed, down, not on his game.
Yeah.
Which, fun fact, Agatha Christie later on talking about what Poirot thinks of his different mysteries, she said that Poirot dislikes this book, The Mystery of the Blue Train, because he was off his game. Even she knows.
Huh. Yeah.
So I'm surprised so many people dislike The Big Four more than they dislike The Mystery of the Blue Train, because it was just kind of, I don't know, boring. But we'll get into that in a second. Background, this was a new read for both of us.
Yes.
Don't know what I completely expected. Something like Murder on Orient Express, which is one of her most famous. So it's like, yay, another train mystery.
Yeah, that's what I was expecting.
But no. Age level adult because default age bracket, and content warning, racism, murder, language, PG-13, and sexism. So let's talk about Apache.
Yeah.
In the book, pair of thugs are described as Apache. This was a legitimate subculture in Paris, France from around 1810 to 1914. So this book came a little bit afterwards, but you know, history is never cut and dry on time periods. So I'm not surprised that the subculture was brought up in this novel, especially when she was writing it. But it essentially was a subculture of violent, criminal, underground people, organizations. The opposite of the mafia. They're much more chaotic evil than lawful evil. And that subculture kind of spread to other countries as news about them spread. It was just basically a bunch of degenerate outlaws that wanted violence and anarchy. And they were known as Les Apache. So why did they refer to them as the Apache? Racism.
Shocker to absolutely nobody.
I felt this was all important for the historical context here. The reason they were called Apache is because the people of France wanted to denote their savagery with which the criminals acted.
So that was clearly the appropriate term to use.
So for anyone who doesn't know anything about the Apaches, they were in the Midwest near Mexico area, and they were very skilled fighters and very strategic in their plans. So they were very, very good at war and fighting, which is probably why they lasted as long as they did, frankly. But I really dislike the French use because they weren't just violent criminals who wanted to go around having anarchy. They were people fighting for their homeland against people that they viewed as invaders, which they're not wrong.
No.
So it's just Dislike. Racism. There you go.
Lots of nuance that they were a little blind to.
Fun fact, Apache is actually a Zuni word. Zuni is another Native American tribe. Apache is their word for enemy.
Huh.
So the Apache and Zunis were enemies, so Zuni called them the enemies. And since Zuni were a little bit farther south than the Apaches, the Spanish picked up on the word Apache. And so that's why nowadays we call them the Apaches, because of the Zuni.
Interesting.
So that's actually a fun fact. The other facts were kind of sad.
Depressing facts.
But that is the historical context of it. Fun fact about this book. I feel like a lot of the other racism it was just like, yeah, that's just a slur. This one has backstory. So to judge a book by its cover, I saw two. The Kindle one I had was the kind of minimalist style that this last iteration had. It was a train going across a bridge, and the water below you see a skull.
Oh, interesting. I don't think that's what the Audible one looks like. Oh, no, it is. You can tell I never looked at the cover of this.
So all I got from that is, okay, someone's gonna die on a train.
Yeah, I mean, it would make me think that someone dies over the river?
Maybe. But the Goodreads one, and I use Goodreads to log my books, the Goodreads one just has a diamond.
Yeah, that one was a little weird.
And then a huge blue stripe that's like, Agatha Christie, The Mystery of the Blue Train, all that. Lies!
It's not even the right gem.
There is no diamond! It's rubies! Ah! Why?
Yeah, the Goodreads one bothers me, so I just don't acknowledge it.
It's not even the right color. So with that one, all I could get is, okay, there's a jewel heist.
Yeah.
I'm not wrong about either of them, but that was the most bare bones information you could probably get.
Yeah.
Although there was a pretty solid amount of time where I was wondering if there was going to be a murder.
Yeah, it took 2 hours of listening to it on Audible before Poirot came in, and I was like, where is he?
Yeah, it was, I want to say like 20% of the way through the book.
It was a lot.
To compare it to Death on the Nile,
It's not as bad as that, but I thought we were headed there.
it is not as long to get to the murder, but Death on the Nile at least gives you Poirot real fast.
I really thought we were headed for like Death on the Nile 2.0 with just how slow it was.
Well, I guess this would be Death on the Nile .5 since it came first.
Yeah, but in the order we're reading it, it's 2.0.
Fair. I thought for a hot second the Marquise wearing the white wig, I was like, was that Poirot?
Me too. I was like, oh, he's got a disguise.
Is that him? You're just sitting there like, where is he? His name's on the front cover. I don't know how I feel about having as much setup as we did.
It seemed like a lot. And I feel like some of those characters really never came into play.
Yeah, up until this point, we've always had a Watson character. It's usually Hastings, but for Murder of Roger Ackroyd, it was the Doctor.
Yeah.
So this is the first time she strays away from that formula, and I thought Catherine was going to be our Watson, and I kind of wish that had happened.
I really did like Catherine. She's far superior to Hastings.
That too. And by the time you get to Death on the Nile or Murder on the Orient Express, which is coming up much faster, she's mastered it by that point where you don't need a Watson character, but you're still basically focused on Poirot. But as her first attempt, I don't know. There was a lot of stuff I didn't need to know.
Yeah.
It had an interesting beginning. We have this super rich millionaire buying these rubies, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, he's gonna get mugged. And then he doesn't get mugged. And then there's this mysterious Marquise, or whatever his name is, wearing a white wig. And then there's this guy, Demetrius. His last name is Greek, and it's
Papopoulos, how the book said it.
Papopoulos? Okay.
Yeah.
That actually looks like how it's pronounced. So yay for being more phonetic than I thought that was going to be. Yeah, he's there and has his little, not little, she's 33, but he has her daughter listen in at the keyhole and be like, what do you think of this guy? It's all exciting and whatnot. And then it just turns into marriage drama.
Yeah, it was like, oh, okay, we're here now.
Apparently, Ruth, the millionaire's daughter, is married to Derek, and he's having pretty public affairs, with this one girl who I think is Asian.
Yeah, it sounded like she was.
Because they specifically said she had yellow tones in her skin.
I imagined Asians. I don't know if that was right.
But then later it says olive skin.
Did it? Huh.
I don't know. maybe it was just to be like, hey, she's French from the coast.
Oh, maybe. I feel like she could have picked a better description.
I don't know. The most description we get, and it's not even confirmed that it's her, is Catherine, who's not related to anything whatsoever. She's just wrong place, wrong time, sees a face. It's beautiful, oval, and dark. And I'm pretty sure that's Muriel. But it's never confirmed. So that's kind of where we are. Anyway, a bunch of people decide to go on a fancy train to France because why not? Ruth is going to meet her lover because she also has a lover.
Yeah, even though she was so mad about her husband having a lover, like, girl, you also have one. Pick a lane.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts about their marriage that is not relevant. But she made me listen to every moment of it. Now I have thoughts. I don't know. I go back and forth on her husband, Derek. I just kind of ended up with he's an idiot.
Yeah, he's just money hungry. That's all I got out of it.
Yeah, he was a gold digger, and he's like, oh, she's clearly after me for my titles. And I'm like, maybe. I don't know. He's a title with no money, so it doesn't, I don't know.
Yeah, and that came up a couple times.
I don't know if I agree with that or not. I legitimately think she just fell in love with this random dude and married him before, like, a rebound. Because she was dating this one dude.
The Comte de la Roche.
That her dad did not like because he's a con man, frankly.
Yes.
And so her dad split them up, and then she almost immediately marries Derek.
I mean, before the frontal lobe was even done developing.
I just felt like it was a rebound. It wasn't so much about the title. Maybe it was the title because, hey, you're fine to marry me. But I don't feel like she married him for the title. Also, Ruth has auburn hair, which immediately made me think, uh-oh, Hastings type.
Where's Hastings?
I'm going to be 78 years old, and I will still remember that Hastings type was redheads. That's all I will remember of this man. Also, he sucks as a husband, but that's a different book.
Are we surprised, though? No, but that is a different book.
So the blue train is a really super fancy train to go on. So Ruth goes on to meet her lover. Derek goes on it because reasons?
He's following Ruth? I don't know.
But he didn't know Ruth was on the train until a couple days in.
That's true. Yeah, it's really not clear why he'd there.
He's literally just going to make himself be a suspect.
Yeah.
And yeah, he has, I think, a cousin?
Oh, yeah.
Or some relation to this random woman.
Yeah.
In Nice. But I don't think he went to see her? I don't know.
No, but he does see Lady Tamplin.
Yeah, but only sparingly. I don't know. Maybe he just really wanted to go to Monte Carlo, because that is literally down the street from Nice.
Maybe. Sounds like rich people activities.
But it doesn't mention him spending. Anyway, Derek aside, so he's going to do that. Muriel, who is his former lover, because he's like, hey, I'm about to be divorced from my wife, so I'm about to lose all the money. And she's like, oh, well, sucks to suck, bye. And then she's like, oh, it would suck if an accident were to happen. And then she decides she's obsessed with him?
Yeah, it's all of a sudden she's like, well, if he kills his wife, he's going to be a millionaire. So
I'm sorry, girl. You're putting all your eggs in a rotten basket because he does not like you anymore. I kind of appreciate his consistency of character.
Yeah, he didn't really change too much.
Because the millionaire dad is like, hey, I'll give you a bunch of money if you do what I want. And he's like, screw you. And then Muriel's about to jump ship. And he's like, well, screw you too. And it's like that the rest of the book.
He wants nothing to do with her. He's like, I'm sick of you. Get out of my sight.
Yeah, and then later on, the count, the fake count, or it might be a real count.
It sounded like he was fake to me.
But the whatever count is like, I'm going to blackmail you with murder stuff. And he's like, screw you. I will not be cowed.
I feel like the Count de la Roche was fake. I feel like that was implied.
I don't know. I appreciate, this is an American thing to appreciate.
You had a backbone. Good job.
But I count it as one of his good characteristics. That's like his one good one. He just kind of seems like a mess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, he is on the train to be as suspicious as possible. So Ruth is there with her maid. I forgot her.
Ada Mason.
Ruth is there with the maid. Derek is there for who knows why. Catherine, who we mentioned previously, was the companion to an old lady, kind of a nurse, kind of a paid best friend. And she did so well that they gave her a bunch of money.
Yeah, basically.
She basically inherited this woman's entire estate.
I mean, that's truly really the life.
So now she's rich for the first time in her life. And so, not knowing what to really do with herself, she gets a letter from her cousin who read about her getting wealth in the newspaper.
Man, that's a wild thing to put in the newspaper, right? Like, hey, this person's rich now. Go rob them, basically, is what it's saying.
I mean, entertainment news.
That is true. That is very true. Still bizarre.
We're not better. We just put it in a different section.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, with all the news lately about Bridget Mendler becoming a space CEO.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, we really haven't changed that much, have we?
No, that is my point to everyone. We never change. Stop being like, this new generation, it's the same.
It just looks different.
We have been the same for millennia.
We are not that creative that we change so much.
No, we are not above anything. So Catherine's like, oh, I'm going to go visit her. So she's on the train. So we have like 5 people on this train that we know about. And Ruth has, okay, this would be my husband's nightmare. You buy a room on the train where you can sleep and whatever. But for meals, they pair you with a stranger, basically.
That sounds anxiety inducing. I would just eat in my room the whole time.
I mean, I'd be down for it, but my husband would hate it.
Me and your husband could just hide. So you'd be on your own. I'm sorry.
That's fine. I'm used to it. So she meets Ruth and they have a conversation and whatever. And Catherine is one of those people that people just tell everything to. Understandable. I get that. That happens to me too. And I'm just like, okay, I now know your life story.
And she's like, I guess I'm just meant to listen to everybody. It's fine.
Yeah. And fair enough, girl. I get it. And so Ruth is like, hey, I'm in love with this guy, but I don't know how I'm feeling about it. And Catherine kind of gives her pretty base advice. And then Ruth is like, aha, I've made my decision. Because she was just looking for a reason for her decision, you know.
Yeah, I get that.
She just wanted a little bit of outside validation for the thing she clearly had already planned to do. That's the only thing Catherine really knows about her. Oh, I talked to Ruth at lunch and then a little bit in her room. She trauma dumped on me a bit.
She really did.
And that's all I know about her. But that's enough to now be the chief information officer about Ruth in the investigation.
Yep, the requirements are low, and you met them. Congrats.
Her husband is on the train, and Catherine's the one that has to identify the body. And thankfully, she's overly observant and noticed this one random mole on Ruth's arm.
Yeah, how badly messed up did her face have to be that no one could recognize her?
Pretty bad. No, you can smash her face real easy.
Crazy.
They don't go into detail. That was more detail than the book goes into. They're just like, oh,
her face is messed up.
Her face is unrecognizable.
Yeah.
So there isn't gore, but if you think about it for a second, there's kind of gore.
Implied gore.
So her face has been made unrecognizable. And so Catherine has to identify the body. And that gets me. Her husband's on the train.
No one realized it.
Why is Catherine in charge of this? And she has to tell him everything in the conversation they had. And I don't know. Somehow Catherine got pulled into this. Anyway, the second meal she has with Poirot. Hey!
He's here!
We're this far into the episode. And we finally get Poirot.
Welcome.
I always love their descriptions of him.
You can tell her feelings towards him.
Yeah. But to give you an idea of how many characters we have had, I grew an outline format, A, B, C, D, E, F, go on and go on. His letters for when he finally gets introduced is H, H.
Oh my gosh.
That is how many characters are introduced before Poirot shows up.
Wow.
So many people.
That's a lot. I didn't even realize it was that many.
So much happens. She talks with Poirot and is like, hey, I am reading this detective novel and I wish life was this interesting. And he's like, I mean, it could be.
You never know.
And of course, we know when Poirot says it could be.
Foreshadowing.
It's gonna happen. He's kind of always right. That's a little bit his thing. So that's the basics of their conversation is Poirot's like, well, if it does happen, it'll be us against the world, baby. That's the best way I could explain it.
Yeah, it's fair enough. Pretty good summary.
And then the murder happens. And she's like, well, crap, I regret everything. So the murder is complicated by the fact that she brought the ruby necklace that was apparently worn by Catherine the Great. Holy crap. That's a big deal. How in the world did this get here from Russia? Who stole this?
And she takes it on the train after her father's like, maybe don't, or you'll be murdered.
Put it in a vault at the bank. And then her boyfriend's like, oh, I'm writing a article on jewelry. You should bring me the jewelry. I'm just...
No one thinks that's suspicious.
Girl, you're so dumb.
That's not suspicious at all.
No. But I kind of love the parallel storyline because, of course, all the guys are like, women, always falling for the con artist that proclaims to give them love.
How terrible.
And I'm like, what do you think Derek and Muriel was? He literally thought she cherished him or whatever and cared for him, so he kept giving her money.
He also fell for the con woman.
Ruined his own marriage for this relationship where she was just being a gold digger to the gold digger.
But that can't happen to men. Never. No.
We would never fall for the Count's whatever. Yeah, because he's a dude. You're not attracted to him. I did like the point where it's like women would fall for it and all men would hate him. And it's like, that's fair.
But if it was a woman, it would be the opposite.
But yeah, I loved the mirror storyline there where they both got screwed over by their quote-unquote romantic partner.
Yeah.
Anyway, the rubies has a big ruby and a couple of smaller rubies. And the whole necklace cost about $400,000 to $500,000.
It's an expensive necklace.
Which we must now convert.
I was about to say, how much is that?
In 2024 money, that single necklace costs somewhere between $70,000 and $85,000.
Oh, I was expecting it to be more.
That's a lot for a necklace.
But I mean, I thought it would have been like at least $1 million for some Catherine the Great rubies.
I don't know. It's black market crap.
That's true.
And the rumor is that Catherine the Great wore it, so you
never know.
But we had, and later on we can bring that up, Derek gets $1 million, which is almost $18 million nowadays when Ruth dies.
Oh my gosh. That's a lot.
So that's how much money he's about to be out of with the marriage.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah.
Noted.
Oh, also, there was a word that Agatha Christie just threw into this book. Completely side note. We're talking about Ruth's murder and her necklace that gets stolen, but complete side note. It's in a Catherine chapter. Because it's different narrators for the first time. It's not like a fixed perspective. It is third person limited because whatever chapter, whoever the narrator is, we only get their mind. We don't get other people. So if it's a Catherine chapter, you know about Catherine's thoughts. If it's a Derek chapter, you know about Derek's thoughts and such and so forth. So that's a first for the series, which has been first person up to this point. Flibbergibbet.
Flibberty gibbets.
Flibbergibbets, which I had to look up. And it means a frivolous, flighty, or excessively talkative person.
We should bring that word back. I love it.
Add that to your word-a-day calendar.
That's a good one.
Flibberty-gibbet.
Flibberty gibbets. That one gave me a good laugh on my drive to work.
Oh, yes. I had to point out that word. So, anyway. Derek and Catherine have been running into each other randomly in London. Like, she saw him at the hotel when Derek was talking with his father-in-law. And then they both see each other at the ticket exchange. Oh, that's why he went to Nice, is because the girl in front of them was like, I'm going to Nice. And he's like, that sounds like a good place to go.
Yeah.
So they keep running into each other and they keep having this feeling of dread. Oh, this person's going to bring me really bad luck, right? Yes, but the way they were leading it up, I thought Catherine was going to end up dead.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, is it Catherine and not Ruth? Because I was so sure it was Ruth. And it was like, well, I mean, this feeling of dread.
Because the actual ending is Catherine and Derek getting together.
Poor decision on her part, truly, but whatever.
I mean, I have a lot of thoughts, but that's beside the point. Yeah, it was so weird. And it was, I guess, foreshadowing to be like, uh-oh, something bad's gonna happen. We swear. It's not just about divorce proceedings.
In a train. There will be a train.
There will be a train. We promise.
Just wait.
So yeah, I wrote down so much information because normally it's relevant, but none of it was relevant, and I just feel a little gypped. The twist still got me, but I was writing things down. I was like, she goes to sleep at 9:30 and wakes up in the middle of the night to see the conductor missing. I thought the conductor missing was gonna come up. She's like, oh, and she sees Derek enters Ruth's compartment, which that kind of came up, but also not really important. Anyway, my favorite thing of all of that, though, is that chapter 11 is literally just murder.
Yes.
It's just called Murder.
Yeah, the chapter titles, I was like, these are truly wonderful titles.
I kind of love that.
I mean, you knew what to expect, that's for sure. No surprises here.
So we have this weird, there's a murder, but why did they destroy her face? Derek's on the train, but he swears he didn't know she was there. And then all of this stuff is happening, right? So Poirot gets involved because, of course, Poirot gets involved.
Yep.
I meant to look up if the inspector was one we had met before, because we've been in France before.
His name didn't sound familiar, but that's not saying much.
True. So my first thought was he finds red hairs in like a carpet. And so my first thought is that's not Ruth. Destroy the face because you don't want them to actually identify who it is.
Yeah.
And maybe they drew a mole on. So that's not Ruth. It was my theory for a while. My second theory was that they killed Ruth before they got on the train.
Oh.
/ at a different time than what they said. And her body was in the rug. Which with my original theory was the fake Ruth was in the rug. And then this one was that the real Ruth was in the rug for some reason for a bit of time. Which was
sort of right.
Yeah. Second run was pretty decent.
Yeah.
But I also had a third feeling that she was just going to go Gone Girl on her husband.
Yeah, that didn't cross my mind, but that totally could have happened.
This body was a body double that they found somehow, and she was still alive. That is not true. No, the body is Ruth, 100%.
Yeah.
So it's a little weird because, like I said, she was traveling with her maid, but the maid got off in Paris.
Supposedly.
Supposedly. Never trust anything anyone says. And she kept going and whatnot. And the maid's story is that she ran into a man that she recognized, but the maid didn't recognize because the maid's only been working for her for like 3 months, and she's a French maid, I think. She's with the French property or something, because she's never seen Derek, really. The husband, she's like, oh, I saw him once when he was in France for some reason or other. So all she can describe this guy is tall, dark, and I guess kind of handsome.
I guess.
We're gonna complete the trio there. But they were looking away from her, and so she couldn't tell their face. They were like looking out the window. And Ruth was basically like, okay, cool, leave. My friend's here. And May's like, okay, well, I guess I'll leave then. Gets off in Paris. She seems to be murdered about after they leave Lyon's.
Yeah, Lyon.
Oh dear, French. The only reason I know how to pronounce Nice is because I've been there. So that's the timeline here. And of course, Catherine saw Derek walk into the compartment, but she kind of was like, oh, but maybe he walked into a different compartment. And he swears, oh, yeah, no, I totally went into my compartment. You were just confused on how many doors down it was and whatever. So the police are kind of at a standstill here in this like holding pattern. They're convinced it's the Count because of the jewelry theft.
I mean, it's a good theory.
And Perot's kind of like, he doesn't really have the personality for it. He likes sure thing. And murder's so risky and
Yeah, it's a lot of risks murdering someone.
So you know it's not the Count.
Yeah.
And it was a very bold way of doing it, too. So instead of focusing on Perot's investigation at this point, we get Catherine talking to her cousin.
Yep, just a little side chapter.
And the cousin being like, oh, give me all the juicy details so I can become the best host ever because I'm just a socialite, basically.
And her husband, Chubby.
Why? Why is that his nickname?
He was just there. It was just like, hey, Chubby's here for a couple chapters, and then you're never going to see him again.
His name is Charles, and they keep calling him Chubby. I don't know, different world, man.
I honestly forgot about him until I was reading the character list, and I was like, oh yeah, Chubby.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, I think back to the old R&B song, Blueberry Hill, and it's sung by a guy named Fats Domino, and I'm pretty sure that's a stage name, but goodness, I need to double check that, though. Let's find out. We've gone down a rabbit hole.
Yes.
Yeah, his real name was Anthony Dominique Domino Jr.
Wow.
And his stage name was Fats Domino. Different world. Oh, he was born in 1928. Fun fact. February. So a month after Fats Domino was born, his book came out.
Oh, interesting. That's fun.
That was an unexpected connection. Anyway, so we get stories about Catherine spending time with Lady Tamlin and Lady Tamlin wanting to write a newspaper article and Derek coming to dinner. And then he gets summoned to the police, but we don't see that scene. We just get this messenger comes to dinner and is like, hey, we need you right now. And Derek being like, ugh, this is so disgusting. And what a terrible time to do this. And then it just skips over that.
Yeah, we're just stuck in a rut of it skipping some fun narrative things and just being like, yeah, it happened.
Yeah, and then it goes to Knighton, which is the millionaire dad's assistant. You know he's doing something shady because he mentions, oh, I'm finally getting him to do business, which I have so many questions on millionaire business that he can do in a hotel. Anyway.
It seems like people just live in the hotel or something. I'm confused about how hotels functioned then.
That's not weird. I mean, that's probably not weird nowadays, but I think people rent houses instead of going to really nice hotels. That's totally a thing.
It was just the same idea. You just like rent a really nice hotel suite instead.
Because he's from America. He is American. And so he's in London and he's in a really fancy hotel, like a penthouse suite.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious what business you can just sit down across from this other dude and they did business. I have questions.
Rich people business. I don't know.
Rich people business where we can just sit down and say gobbledygook words and business happens, I guess. But it's Knighton's perspective and you get that, oh, I'm finally getting him to do business, getting him to do what I want, basically. So you're like, okay, so Knighton's sketchy.
Yeah.
I thought embezzlement.
Oh, yeah.
That was my guess on what Knighton was doing. I still wonder if embezzlement, because it never comes up again exactly what he was doing.
Yeah.
You find out that Knighton is the most sketchy, but I still think embezzlement. I still think that was happening in the background, but oh well.
It was just there, just not acknowledged.
Yeah. So everyone figures out who's on the train. Derek finally figures out that Muriel followed him on the train like a
stalker.
Crazy person. Muriel needs help.
She's got some anger issues.
I think she has a personality disorder, but
oh, yeah.
That's just me. She has issues. Agreed. You know how to pick them, Derek.
Truly good taste.
At this point, I was wondering if it wasn't so much a whodunit as it was a how they did it. Because it felt like everything was pointing towards Derek.
Yeah.
And so I thought maybe she was changing it up. Oh, we know who did it. We just need to figure out how Hercule Poirot pins him down. No, it's still a whodunit.
Yeah.
Know way too much about Derek.
It's a who and how done it. 2 for 1.
I feel like we have a lot of Catherine chapters, but we don't really learn about her.
I wanted so much more about her.
I feel like I know everything about Derek.
The more you know, the more suspicious they are, right? Is that how this works?
I guess. Anyway, the millionaire dad finally comes to Nice. The maid gives her story and whatnot. And the maid's like, oh, I think maybe it could have been another passenger. But she thought he got on at Leon's France. And I agreed with that.
Plausible, yeah.
Her story made it seem like it was planned. That he was going to get on the train and she was going to kick her maid out, right? Anyway, for whatever reason, Van Alden waits the longest amount of time before mentioning that Derek had a mistress and that they were both on the train.
Yeah, he's just like, hey, is this also, you know...
I guess he just really wanted the Count to be it, but I would spill everything if my kid died.
Yeah, I'm like, he already didn't like him, so why was he concerned?
Maybe because publicity in these books is way worse. Maybe that's changed a little bit. I don't know. But he's terrified of the publicity of it, maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'd be pissed. I'd want him hanged.
Yeah, he killed your daughter, sir.
It's very weird. So at this point, Van Alden hires Poirot, which, good. Sometimes I worry about his spending habits. Why was he on the blue train to begin with?
Yeah, I would have so many more questions if we didn't have the backstory from the short stories.
Oh yeah. But anyway, he gets hired, which is great. I'm so happy for him. Give Poirot all the monies, please. Thank you.
He deserves it.
So he switches, and once again, he kind of pulls up, I'm gonna follow this to the end, just so you know. That's what he does. So at this point, Poirot switches from being with the police to being with Van Alden.
And we never really hear about the police that much again.
Not really. Every once in a while, he brings a person to them and they give their story or whatever, but yeah. No, instead, we need to learn about the Count and how he claims he got there a day early and he has an alibi because he went to Monte Carlo and whatnot. And the maid comes in and he's like, oh, I can't really say if that's him or not. Okay. So they think it's him, but they're like, okay, he has an alibi. We don't know what to do with that quite yet. So they don't arrest him or anything. Anyway, back to Derek. Have you missed him?
Not really.
I didn't. And he's just mad about everything because finding out about Muriel and staying in different hotels and whatever. And a part of me wondered if Ruth became Muriel. I don't know. I had so many thoughts that did not pan out whatsoever, but I was thinking pretty crazy. Like maybe Ruth killed Muriel and switched.
Oh.
Anyway, I had so many thoughts that did not make sense. Okay, here's the thing. He hasn't seen her in 3 weeks' time. Not that they're in Nice now, but Muriel knows about the ruby necklace and its history.
She has connections.
Because Derek supposedly didn't even know she left London, because she finds out once they're in Nice. And I'm just like, how many compartments are on this train? You were like 2 doors down from your wife. Did you never eat food?
He just ate at different times? I don't know.
And then you didn't see Muriel either? Does she also not eat food? Questions. And I was wondering at this point if Muriel and the Count were in on it together. Because she's kind of from the area, it feels like. And I was like, oh, maybe she's also in love with the Count, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Because that is my downfall in so many of these books, is I forget that the culprits can be working together. So I just started throwing people together. I was like, maybe it's Muriel and the Count. Ugh. So there was this really weird moment where the Count warns his staff about the police coming by to question. They might go through his stuff and whatever. And Muriel shows up and the Count doesn't know her. And I was like, oh, dang it. Okay, well, it's not them. But the Count has 2 servants, right?
Uh-huh.
One is, that is another Greek name. Flavel is his last name. We're going to go with that.
I honestly don't remember their names.
And then they have his wife, Marie, right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
And I got confused because they're in the Count's household, right?
Uh-huh.
But later on, a servant named Marie summons Catherine to the phone in her cousin's house.
Maybe they just had the same name.
I guess that's what happened, but I thought the Count was doing this long con and also had his hooks in this cousin.
Oh.
And then the servant was... Anyway, that's not what happened, but I got really confused because there were 2 Maries all of a sudden.
She just got tired of making up names, okay? It's 2 Maries now.
I have questions that will never be answered now. But anyway, Poirot finally shows up. This is around the point where Catherine's like, oh, I might have feelings for Derek, which bad. No, bad.
Yes.
Catherine, no, I like you. Anyway, Poirot's like, hey, Van Alden wants to talk to you. And so he drives Catherine there, and she finally tells Poirot about Derek going into the compartment. And then she also mentions, oh, yeah, I walked around the Lyons station and I didn't see the Count get on.
Yeah, she just saw this man go into her compartment and just didn't think that was important. Catherine, please.
She kind of gaslit herself. She's like, oh, but what if I'm wrong? What if he went into his own compartment?
Yeah.
But she finally tells Poirot at this point. And then they go to the hotel, and Van Alden's like, hey, I want to know everything about your conversation. And I was kind of surprised Poirot stepped out of the room. He and Knighton stepped out of the room, and so it was just Van Alden and Catherine. I was a little surprised. Anyway, by the way, there's a love triangle. Knighton also likes Catherine.
Poor Catherine.
And at this point, I realized Knighton has a connection to the cousin that she's staying with. There are so many webs.
So many.
There's so many people in this book. So during the war, the cousin opened her house to become a hospital. And while there was a jewel heist around the time Knighton was there. And that made me think Knighton and the cousin were in on the jewel theft. Maybe they worked together, because Lady Tamlin's all like, oh yeah, Knighton, I totally know who you are, and all this stuff. And so, I don't know, I had questions. And then Knighton mentioned somebody else getting robbed when he's there. And it's like, okay, so this guy is obviously the jewel thief.
He's around a lot of jewel robberies. It's a little weird.
As we learned from Death on the Nile.
Yeah, I was like, they must be related.
So I was like, okay, so you're embezzling and you're a jewel thief. Awesome. You definitely at least wanted that necklace.
Yeah.
I could not confirm that he had stolen it, but okay, so you're a jewel thief. So one thing I kind of love of this book is Van Alden is all of us. He's like, Poirot, investigate some stuff. And Poirot's like, no, we need to go to a tennis match because we can see this random guy there.
Yeah, why are we at tennis?
Why? And looking back on it, he doesn't talk to him there. He talks to him in person later because he knows where he lives. Why did we go to a tennis match?
He just wanted to have some fun, I guess.
I guess so. This is when you learn that Derek is practically a native in French. He's so good at speaking French.
Yeah.
I know the point of the book is to make him as suspicious as possible, but come on. So at that point, I thought he and Lady Tamlin were in on it. I told you, I linked everyone together.
One of these has to be right.
One of these has to be right. Poirot apparently found a cigarette case with K on it, but it's not Catherine's. And Derek's last name starts with a K. And so the maid's like, oh, yeah, she totally bought that as a present for her husband, but I don't know if she gave it to him or not.
Even though they haven't seen each other in 3 weeks. That's suspicious.
Because Derek's, I guess that's hers. And then Poirot's like, so she had 2? And he's just really confused. So maybe he didn't give it to her, if we're going to take the maid's word for it, which you never do.
No.
That is always the first mistake. Nothing is guaranteed. I have so many weird connections. At one point, I thought Muriel was Zia.
Yeah.
The jewelry store guy's daughter. I was like, okay, they're connected. No, I was throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing if anything stuck. And then I was like, oh, well, maybe he does business with Lady Tamlin. Like I said, I don't know what your theories were, but I was like, anything. I'm trying.
I had no theories. I was just along for the ride.
Yeah.
I've given up trying to solve these books because I'm always wrong, so I just enjoy it. I'm just going to be here.
I'm just going to experience this.
Yes.
So, Poirot finds out that the fake count had an exact replica of the rubies, and he uses his jewel friend to confirm that it's a really high-quality fake. I was kind of surprised that no one wanted to get the necklace back. Because Van Alden's like, I just want the murderer. And so Poirot goes to his jewelry friend because he apparently definitely has black market connections. And he's definitely the one who just sold the necklace again on the black market.
For sure.
Because it ends up with Muriel?
Yeah.
Because she states a former ambassador or a lord or something, and he buys it for... Why? I'm so confused. But it's not like the whole necklace. It's just the really big ruby that has a name. And, well, that's just depressing. But I guess he couldn't sell it as a whole. I don't know. I'm surprised these jewelry thefts are going unsolved when everyone is walking around being like, oh, this is totally the necklace with a very specific name.
Yes, and also, why would you buy your daughter a necklace and be like, but maybe put it in a safe so you don't get murdered? Don't wear it ever. Just have it. Why would you want anything like that?
Maybe wear it sometimes, like on fancy occasions. I don't know. I would get so anxious.
That's like people wanting the diamond that's cursed. The Hope Diamond. It's in the Smithsonian.
I would feel so uncomfortable with something that was worth that much money.
I would be like, this is worth more than my literal entire life.
And granted, there is a historical thing about women collecting really expensive jewelry because women could not have finances of their own, literally could not have their own bank account. I don't know about the rest of the world, but it was in the 1960s that American women could have their own bank account without their husband's name being on it or their father's.
Yeah.
So women would collect really, really nice jewelry and pass it down to their daughters as a means of, if things go real south, sell this and you'll have some money.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But that's not really at play here.
It's just fancy rock because I can.
It's just really fancy and she's about to totally give it away to this idiot. Maybe she's just a little entitled because she's rich. That's all I can go with here.
She's in love.
Whatever. The black market jewelry guy's like, oh, you should definitely vote on this random horse named Marquise. And I was like, oh yeah, that guy. He was mentioned at the beginning of the book with a white wig and never mentioned again.
Yeah, I did really enjoy this part where they're talking in code.
That was pretty cool. I did like that.
This is fun.
And at this point, he telegrams Jap to get information about something. Hey, Jap, even when you're not here, you're relevant.
Yes.
The maid changes her story and decides that Derek is the one. And this eventually leads Derek to being arrested. Okay, here's the thing. Muriel needing help. Derek runs into Muriel. Muriel's like, oh, we should eat lunch together because clearly you still love me, obviously, right? You're going to spend all the money on me, right?
Of course.
No. And he goes and has lunch with Catherine. And Muriel just follows them around like a stalker.
Yeah, girl. Kind of creepy.
Why are all your eggs in this rotting basket? She immediately finds a new dude as soon as he's arrested. Just go for a new guy.
If she's as much of a hotshot as she's made out to be, she could have anyone.
anyone. If she is as a hotshot as she was saying, she had several guys at once. But she just leaves everything to go follow this one guy that hates her, and then she gets mad that he hates her.
Shocking.
And at this point, I was like, Muriel did it. She was just a jealous, petty woman, and now Catherine's next. Catherine's gonna die because Muriel is upset. And so Muriel's upset about the situation, goes to the Count, this random guy she's never met, and she's like, you should tell the cops this information. So he goes to jail because I'm angry.
Yeah, if it had been Morel that had done it, I would not have been surprised.
She needs help. So instead of going to the police, the Count tries to blackmail him, and it doesn't work, and then the Count stops trying to blackmail him.
Yeah.
That's kind of it for the Count.
Yeah, he's just sort of done with at that point.
I hope you liked all that build-up. We will never see him again. Blah, blah, blah. Catherine goes to Monte Carlo, sees Derek and then Knighton, and both of them reveal their affections to Catherine. And Poirot waxes poetic, is like, oh, you can love a thief, but not a murderer. And you're kind of like, okay, so is he hinting that you should go with Knighton? Because Knighton's, okay, he's the jewelry thief, for sure. So is he saying, hey, don't marry Derek, marry Knighton?
Yeah, that's what I was like, oh, this is weird.
That was my thoughts at that moment. And Derek admits, it's like, oh, yeah, I did go into Ruth's compartment and I did totally try to tell you that I did it, but that's beside the point. This relationship is not built upon trust. And that's beside the point. But he's like, oh, Ruth was asleep when I went in the compartment because he was like, I'm going to go talk to her. And then he walked in and she was asleep and sleeping so peacefully. I didn't want to interrupt her sleep.
She was dead.
She was dead. Yeah.
She was not asleep.
Very much dead at that point. And then Catherine just has this feeling that Ruth is there and is trying to tell her something. We're going to put a pin in that.
That is important. We'll just address it later, though.
So Muriel insists that Van Alden show up because it didn't work going through the Count. And as soon as they show up, she throws an absolute temper tantrum, screaming, crying, throws herself on the ground.
Anger issues. And she's also throwing stuff that belongs to the hotel. Girl, you have to pay for that.
Yeah, she's throwing stuff around because she's so mad. What have you been doing for the past day and a half? Like, you've had this information, but now that you have an audience, you're gonna... I don't know. Anyway, she's like, I know Derek did it, and I saw him leaving the compartment, and he totally told my plans, like, oh, an accident needs to befall her, which we know is not true. But that's it. She's like, I have proof, but I'm keeping on to it. I didn't give it to the Count, but I have proof. And then you get there, and she's just like, yeah, he said some shady stuff.
Yeah, she's just mad.
Yeah, and it works, though. He does get arrested eventually. The Lady Tamlin's daughter, Poirot, stops by to tell Catherine that Derek's been arrested, and the daughter of Lady Tamlin grills him about it. And at this point, I was wondering if she was the Marquess.
Oh, that could have been interesting.
Yeah, because I was like, is she just being really nice to Catherine to get her money?
That could have been cool. Ooh.
But in the end, she just says, Poirot, hey, I bet the murderer got on the train and wasn't one of the passengers. And this just blows the case wide open for Poirot.
The light bulb moment. You go, Lennox.
I don't know why. Because the maid said the exact same thing. She thought the guy came on as a passenger instead of came on the train and wasn't a passenger. I don't know, man, but this blows it wide open for him.
Whatever works. He solved the mystery in the end. That's what matters.
Yeah. So about the black market jewel thief, Poirot hangs out with him for a bit, talks to the daughter for a little while. By the way, Muriel owes the black market guy a lot of money.
Maybe that's why she was so stressed that Derek was going to leave her.
Girl, you've sunk like 3-4 weeks into this. You could have had another guy by this point.
Yeah.
Anyway, don't worry about that. That doesn't come up again.
Nope. Another dropped plot point. Goodbye.
So the daughter mentions, hey, the person that gave the necklace to my dad was a woman. And so at this point, I was like, it's Muriel. No, it's not. But that was my thought. So at this point, Catherine gets homesick. And she's like, I'm going to go back to England. This is how long this investigation's taking. What is Poirot doing? for a month. He is so off his game.
Watching tennis matches.
He solved the murder of the Orient Express in a couple hours. He solved the mysterious affair of Styles in like a couple weeks, and he was actively investigating the whole time and waiting for testimony and trials, and I don't know, man. I agree. He was off his game.
Yeah.
So Poirot's like, hey, you should totally tell Knighton that you're leaving. And she does. And Knighton's like, oh, we should totally also go to London. Well, while we're at it, I wonder why.
Curious.
At this point, the fake count doesn't come up, but the count's servants come up.
Poirot just has to threaten them. It's fine.
I kind of love this because at the beginning of this, he's like, okay, so normally I'm very nice and whatever when I do this, but now I must shake the fear of God into them.
I was kind of shocked. Oh my gosh.
He did it! He walks up to this house, comes up to them, and he's like, you've been lying to the police 7 times, in fact, but I'm just going to focus on the arrival time. And they're like, but no, he totally came Tuesday, not Wednesday. And Poirot's like, I'm going to have you arrested for accessory to murder.
Poirot was really just over it because, like, this case has been haunting me.
And the servants are like, holy crap, we did not know there was a murder. Yeah, he totally came here at Wednesday. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna go 2 for 2, and goes to Muriel, and he accuses her of entering Ruth's compartment, and once again, she throws a literal tantrum on the floor, throws herself down, screams, cries.
She was so obnoxious.
This is an adult woman with a successful career.
So obnoxious.
And it's so charming. She charms me. I have questions about her mental stability, but, you know.
So many questions.
So Catherine goes back to London, and Poirot's like, hey, I'm going to be in London soon. We should totally meet up.
Yeah.
What have you been doing this whole time?
Watching tennis. That's my guess.
Anyway, she stays with a lady. She's basically being a paid companion again because she's not really sure what to do with herself. Fair enough. And then that lady's like, oh, I have cutouts about your cousin's hospital and you have young eyes. You should go through them. And I'm like, she's about to learn something really big.
Yes.
Not really.
Kinda.
She learns that there's a jewel thief, an heirloom emerald necklace, and I was like, okay, well, we knew that. But there was also a picture of Lady Tamlin and her daughter, but the daughter was facing away from the camera, and I thought that was something. I was like, maybe Muriel and Lennox are working together. I thought that was something, and that was not something.
It was really just how it was a shame that Lady Tamlin had an ugly daughter. Rude.
Yeah.
I felt so bad for Lennox. They're like, she's kind of ugly and has a bad sense of humor.
She doesn't have a bad sense of humor. She calls it as she sees it. She's not wrong at all, ever, when she calls her mom out.
She's really not. It just upsets her mom. So her mom's like, you know what? You have a bad sense of humor and you're ugly.
So Knighton wants to come visit Catherine, and the old lady she's staying with is like, oh, he's after your money. But then he visits and she's like, oh my gosh, no, he's totally in love with you.
He's so charming.
And then Amelia goes on this strange rant about, oh, you should never hide jewelry in safes. You need to hide it in other hiding spots.
Truly kind of bizarre.
That's not really relevant.
Yeah, it was just like, it's in my socks.
This is why jewel thieves look in the flour sack, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I was really like, oh, so her jewels are going to go missing. I thought that's what this was all leading up to. Because she was telling us, oh, the jewels are here and the key is here. And I was like, oh, so Knighton's going to come visit and steal the jewels. That's what's going to happen. And it didn't.
No, we just got a weird, I don't know if it was supposed to be informational. Like Agatha's, hey, safes kind of suck.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know. That was a very random thing that I thought was going to be very important. And it wasn't. That is what I could say about so much of this book.
Yeah.
Anyway, Poirot takes this random dude out for lunch and is like, hey, you know Kitty Kid? Sure, why not? Let's introduce Kitty Kid.
Another character, yay.
This far into the book, too.
But is it a new character?
And there was this weird thing where it's like, oh, Kitty Kid disappeared 3 years ago, and Muriel didn't start dancing until 2.5 years ago. I was like, okay, so she's Kitty immediately.
I didn't even notice that. Ugh.
But no, Muriel has, it's an ex-prime minister. I kept thinking it's an ambassador. It's an ex-prime minister who buys her the huge ruby. And I'm just like, you had so many options and you just kept tossing yourself at Derek. Poirot and Catherine meet up again. I kept thinking Catherine was gonna, I don't know. I wish they had worked together more.
Yeah, I wanted more Catherine.
Because Catherine's pretty smart and sharp and has a fun time, unlike Hastings. But Poirot's like, yeah, I recently was in contact with the Russian embassy. I guess about the necklace? I have no idea why he was talking to the Russian embassy.
Just for fun.
Anyway, he asks questions about the face disfigurement. He's been back and forth with the murderer and the thief are the same person, and he decides that he has figured it out. And she just hands over a newspaper clipping that he's thankful for. And so I was like, is it about the jewels or about the daughter? It's about the jewels. The thing we already knew about.
Yeah.
Oh well. That was a fun place to go, but that didn't work out. There's actually a lot of dropped subplots now that I think about it.
It really is.
So Poirot goes to Van Alden, who's the boss, right? And at this point, I would agree with Van Alden that he's just yanking your chain, because now he's like, well, maybe the fake count was involved with the murder. And Van Alden's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, what if he stole the necklace, but it was already the fake?
Ooh.
And that's kind of what I thought at first, that he got it, but he thought it was paste when Poirot first was like, oh, this is a fake copy. That's what I thought. He was, oh, he thought he got the real thing, but it was actually paste.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, Poirot thinks it's necessary for him, Van Alden, and Knighton to take the blue train to go back to Nice. And while they're there, Poirot just reenacts the crime before Paris.
And it was odd to me that they pointed out that he was anxious. Interesting, because he's usually very calm.
Yeah, and Poirot tries to... Okay, here's the thing. It doesn't make sense. Poirot tries to run off the train in Paris, but ends up having to return when the conductor still has their tickets, so they can't leave without repaying the train fare. And Van Alden's like, well, just repay the train fare. And Poirot's like, no, let's get back on the train.
It was kind of bizarre.
Oh, no. Now that I think about it, I take it back. You know why I bet he did it?
Why?
I bet he needed to get Van Alden and Knighton off the train so the police could get into the compartment.
Yeah. We're so smart.
I bet that's what that was, because they head back together, and Poirot goes into the compartment, makes sure the door's locked and whatever, and they're just sitting around, and Poirot mentions he thinks something's going to happen. Did he just make them all bait? Was my thought. Is the murderer going to come back? What is happening?
Surprise!
No, he just wakes up Van Alden when they're approaching Leon's very early in the morning, and Poirot reveals that the maid is Kitty Kid.
Ada Mason is Kitty Kid.
And she was the youth that Catherine saw get off at Leon's. She didn't get off at Paris. Okay, that got me. Also, the cigarette case was Knighton's. Oh, they're in league. And he is the Marquis.
That's what the K was for.
Well, okay. That was on none of my theory boards.
Yeah, no, it was not.
Because we get the explanation, and I realized it right away. I was like, oh my gosh, everything the maid said was a lie. Which, when Poirot's explaining it, I don't remember which one he explains that portion to, but it takes him way too long to be like, but she said there was a man there. And it's like, yeah, she lied.
Just because she said it doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah. So he had been doubting the maid ever since she was like, oh, Ruth bought this for a present for her husband.
Yeah.
That's the part where I was like, oh my gosh, if she's a liar, everything falls apart in this case. So the only people to confirm that the maid was in Paris was supposedly Ruth talking to the conductor, which we find out was actually the maid disguised as Ruth, and Knighton himself mentioning he ran into her. So she doesn't really have an alibi for being in Paris at the right time. So he planted the idea that the man on the train that she quote unquote saw was Derek. And when she immediately was like, yeah, that totally is, and went to the police, he was like, okay, I've got you.
He was like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
You must be involved.
Okay, here's a little bit where forensics comes in and messes this up. She wrapped up the body in a carpet so the conductor wouldn't see her, and then disfigured her face so the conductor wouldn't recognize she talked to a different person, and then puts the body down. So Knighton's the one that killed her, and then got off 12 hours before Leon's with the jewels, and supposedly she died at Leon's. That's 12 hours.
Isn't it pretty obvious when 12 hours has passed?
Rigor mortis should have tipped them off that she was very dead.
Yeah, how long does it take for rigor mortis to wear off?
It takes an hour to set in, to start, and then it lasts for 24 hours.
Oh, yeah.
12 hours in, she is a rigid board. She did not just get murdered. Forensics would have helped in this moment.
Yeah.
Plot hole aside, Knighton really did fall for her, and so that's why he was going out of his way to pin the crime on Derek. Bruh. But remember that pin we put in with Ruth's ghost?
Yes.
Catherine immediately was like, Ruth is telling me that Knighton killed her. So Catherine started acting on it and fake flirting with him and noticing that he had a fake limp and all this stuff, and she was on it.
She really was.
So the whole time, everything after Monte Carlo is her pretending to try to get him to slip up.
Good job, Catherine. Hastings could never.
Also, the daughter of Lady Tamlin had a thing for Derek, but at least she's like, I was too young for him anyway. That's how the book ends.
Yeah.
Catherine and Derek hook up, I guess. I don't know. I guess all's well that ends well.
I guess.
But yeah, it took him like a couple of months to figure this out. And the only reason he figured it out is because Lennox was like, hey, what if it was a passenger?
He really was off his game.
It was something. Anyway, general thoughts. This book did have a lot of really good one-liners.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an example. I want this stitched on a pillow. Poirot said, I do not argue with obstinate men. I act in spite of them.
That was a really good one.
Ooh, that's good. And there were two other ones that I didn't write down, but a lot of other people highlighted. And I was like, ooh, that's good. But as a whole, it wasn't that sharp.
Yeah.
I kind of wish Catherine had taken the Watson perspective, and that had just been how this operated.
That could have been interesting.
Agatha was in a difficult portion of her life, so I'm not surprised the book turned out how the book turned out. But I will say, his dynamic with Catherine, it wasn't, love interest. It felt more like daughter of Poirot vibes.
Yeah.
Because there's so many daughter of Sherlock books. I think there's like 3 series where it's daughter of Sherlock. And so Catherine felt like daughter of Poirot.
She did. I definitely felt like he was more like a father figure.
She was just sharp and cunning and really insightful with people.
And we will probably never see her again, which makes me so sad.
I know. She was so great. Alas.
But we'll probably have to deal with Hastings again.
Yeah. So completely unrelated to this book, guess what I found out?
What?
Agatha Christie had a pen name.
Oh.
Mary Westmacott.
Westmacott. Okay. Interesting. What'd she write?
In which she wrote romance novels.
Oh.
And her romance novels were rated higher than her mystery ones, according to Wikipedia. What?
All right. So next series, those.
I don't know. We're going to have to talk about it. But her first book is called The Giant's Bread.
Okay.
I have so many questions. But it came out in 1930. So we're still in 1928.
Huh.
I have questions. I think she wrote 6 to 8. I can't remember exactly how many books. It wasn't that many. But I'm just... How is this the first time I'm hearing of this?
And this is coming from Miss We Don't Need Romance in a Detective Novel?
Well, to be fair, it's not a detective novel.
That's true. You know what? People are full of surprises.
So many questions. The world needs to know this.
And now they do.
And also we need to know this. And we'll talk about it.
Yes.
But I'm not going to make any promises because it's still going to take us like 20 years to get through just prose.
We're going to be here for a long time. It's fine.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, romance novels.
Interesting.
I have so many questions, but that's for a different time. One question for the author. I'm really curious if at this point in her life, given how dark it was, if writing was her comfort or if it was her taskmaster. Like she had to write a book.
Yeah, because she had the contract.
She writes 1 to 2 books a year. And now that we add romance books, she's writing more. So she's doing this constantly.
Yeah.
But was it because it was comforting to go into her own fantastical world? Or was it because she had to?
Could it possibly be a little bit of both?
It could be both.
Could be.
I'm very curious about that time period that she never wanted to talk about, which is fair.
Listen, she said, I'm not going to share. Y'all can just deal with it.
Yeah, but that would be my question. I'd be very curious her relationship with her work.
So my question was, is this the point where she started disliking Poirot? Because we know by the end of the Poirot series, she really does not like him.
So there's like 30-something of them.
Yeah, she's sick of him. And I was like, did you start disliking him at this point? Because it took her so so long to introduce him? Were you just putting it off because you're like, ugh, this guy again?
I have no idea. My sister-in-law bought me for Christmas Agatha Christie's notebooks, and so I'm gonna get around to those. So I'll see if I'll be able to add anything to the research I do, but I do not know.
Also, second question, why no mention of the little gray cells?
Oh my gosh, she did not.
That's his whole thing.
I think he mentioned the psychology once when he was like, oh, the Count wouldn't be a murderer. He did not mention the gray cells.
The little gray cells. I was waiting. It never came up.
To be fair, a lot of times when he brings up the little gray cells, though, he's insulting someone for not using theirs.
It's usually Hastings. I was thinking, I was like, maybe it's because Hastings wasn't in the book, because it's usually when he goes, Hastings, you must use the little gray cells.
And he didn't need to tell Catherine.
She was using hers quite efficiently. Yeah.
Catherine was on it. She figured it out before Poirot did.
She should have told Poirot to use his little gray cells.
Rating, bumpy train ride out of 10. You think it's going to be smooth and it's going to be nice and you're going to have this nice little compartment. Honestly, I think train is my favorite way to travel, but bumpy train rides are yikes.
Yeah.
They really ruined the experience.
I gave mine flibberty gibbets out of 10 because that phrase made me laugh. And I said, it's got to be that one.
And it is accurate because it is a frivolous, flighty, or excessively talkative novel.
Yeah. See, I didn't even know it, the meaning of it. I just was like, oh, it's a fun word. Just went with it.
And it's perfect.
I'm glad it worked out for me and it made sense.
Read again? Probably not. I own Halloween Party, and I was like, yeah, I have no desire to read this again, although I might. Which, by the way, throw in, I'm all for Haunting of Venice. It does not follow the book barely at all, which is exactly what I wanted it to do.
Perfect.
So that's my thought on that movie. But I don't even want to own this one. Even as a completionist, I'm just like,
Yeah.
I don't really want to go out of my way to try to find it.
I said I would read it again, but only for Catherine if she doesn't show up in any other books.
She probably won't.
I know.
She found love. That is the death sentence of Agatha Christie.
It is. But no, I would never pick this back up unless I was like, you know what? I just really need to read some Catherine Gray. But I mean, that's never going to happen. So it's a no.
Favorite of the series so far, Roger Ackroyd.
Yeah, it's still that one. That was a good one. The twist on that one was fun.
So good. It's her best one. I know it's so inflammatory to be like, did Agatha Christie peak early? But it's still the best one. And it is number 4.
This twist in this one was pretty good, but still the twist in Roger Ackroyd, you're like, oh, that one's caught me more off guard than this one.
And it's so good. And it's so rereadable. I've reread it several times now, and I love it every single time I read it.
Yeah, this one didn't feel like a book I would read again and pick up on things I missed.
No, I don't think you're going to get anything out of it other than Derek divorce drama.
This one just felt like there wasn't as much complexity and as much layering.
Because there's just not that much investigation. I think she said it best, that Poirot would not like this mystery because he's off his game. Because he is off his game.
We all have those days, Poirot. It's fine.
Or months, apparently.
You know what? I can't judge.
But have you read this book? Train, Plane, or Boat? Do you have any book recommendations for us? Tell us all about it in the comments below. If you like the video, hit like. And if you're enjoying yourself, hit subscribe for more. Thanks for exploring the mystery of the Blue Train with us. Join us next time when we'll be exploring Imposters by Scott Westerfeld. I'm Sam Reiner.
And I'm Hannah Rossell.
And we hope to see you and a friend here next time. Escape With Me Book Club is a Lunar Skulk production. Check us out on TikTok or Instagram to keep up to date with us. Lunar_SKULK.